The piercing scream cut through the evening air as Patrick Vance's hand froze mid-turn on his apartment door key. His 6-year-old daughter Emma looked up at him with wide eyes, clutching her worn teddy bear tighter against her pink coat. "Daddy, someone's crying," she whispered, her small fingers reaching for his hand. "Stay right behind me, sweetheart," Patrick said, immediately turning toward the sound. In the dim light of the parking lot, he spotted a woman frantically chasing after a hooded figure who was sprinting away with what appeared to be a purse. Without hesitation, Patrick crouched down to Emma's level. "Stay right here by our door, don't move. I need to help someone, okay?" Emma nodded solemnly, her blonde curls bouncing. "Be careful, Daddy." Patrick took off across the parking lot, thankful for the years he'd spent running to catch buses after late shifts. The thief had a head start, but was slowed by having to navigate between parked cars. Patrick cut across an empty parking space and managed to intercept the hooded figure just as they were about to reach the street. "Stop right there," Patrick shouted, positioning himself directly in the thief's path. The thief, a teenage boy with panicked eyes, tried to dodge around him, but Patrick anticipated the move and lunged forward, grabbing the strap of the purse. They struggled briefly before the boy suddenly released his grip, nearly sending Patrick stumbling backward. "Whatever, man, it's not worth it." The teen spat before taking off down the street. Patrick stood there catching his breath, the rescued purse clutched in his hands, when the sound of hurried footsteps approached from behind. "Oh my God, thank you," came a breathless voice. Patrick turned to find himself face to face with a woman about his age, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that seemed oddly formal for this modest neighborhood. Her chestnut hair was coming loose from what had probably been an elegant updo, and despite her disheveled appearance, there was something commanding about her presence. "Are you all right?" Patrick asked, handing her the purse. "Did he hurt you?" "No, just startled me," she said, accepting the purse gratefully. "I had just gotten out of my car when he came out of nowhere." She glanced down at her slightly scraped palm. "This is from when I fell trying to chase after him. Daddy." Emma's voice called from across the parking lot, where she still stood obediently by their apartment door, though clearly concerned. "My daughter," Patrick explained. "I should get back to her." The woman's eyes softened as she spotted Emma. "Of course, I can't thank you enough, Mr. Vance." "Patrick Vance. Tessa Porter," she replied, extending her hand. "Is there any way I can thank you properly? Maybe a reward?" Patrick shook his head, already backing away. "Just glad I could help, Miss Porter. Stay safe." Before she could protest, he jogged back to Emma, who immediately threw her arms around his legs. "Did you catch the bad guy, Daddy?" she asked, looking up at him with admiration. Patrick lifted her up, balancing her on his hip despite how big she was getting. "Not exactly, kiddo, but I got the lady's purse back. That's what matters." As he unlocked their apartment door, he glanced back over his shoulder. Tessa Porter was still standing there, watching them with a thoughtful expression. She raised her hand in a small wave before pulling out a phone from her recovered purse. Inside their modest 2-bedroom apartment, Patrick set about preparing dinner macaroni and cheese with hot dogs cut into stars, Emma's favorite. It was a far cry from the gourmet meals he'd once prepared as a rising star in the culinary world, but those days were behind him now. "Homework done?" Patrick asked as he placed a plate in front of Emma at their small kitchen table. "Uh-huh," she replied, picking up her fork. "Miss Jenkins said I got all my spelling words right." "That's my girl," Patrick said with a proud smile, ruffling her hair. "After dinner, bath time, and then we can read a chapter of that unicorn book before bed." As they ate, Patrick's mind kept drifting back to the woman in the parking lot. Tessa Porter. There had been something striking about her beyond her obvious beauty, a kind of strength in her eyes even in a moment of distress. "Daddy, you're not eating," Emma pointed out, interrupting his thoughts. "Sorry, pumpkin, just thinking about work tomorrow." Patrick took a bite of his dinner, pushing thoughts of mysterious women from his mind. As a single father working as a line cook at a local diner, romantic daydreams were luxuries he couldn't afford. The next morning was the usual rush. Getting Emma ready for school, dropping her off at the before-school program because his shift started at 7 a.m., and then making it to Sunnyside Diner just in time to tie his apron and start prepping for the breakfast rush. "You look like you could use this," said Marlene, the 60-something waitress who had been working at the diner since before Patrick was born. She slid a cup of coffee across the prep counter. "You're a lifesaver," Patrick said gratefully, taking a sip. "Rough night?" She asked, loading her tray with plates for table 6. Patrick shook his head. "Just the usual. Emma had a nightmare around midnight. Took a while to get her back to sleep." Marlene clicked her tongue sympathetically. "That child misses her mother even if she doesn't remember her." Patrick nodded, the familiar pang of loss tightening his chest. 3 years had passed since the car accident that took his wife, but raising Emma alone was still a daily challenge. Financial struggles had forced them to downsize from their suburban home to the apartment complex where they now lived, and he'd had to abandon his career as a sous chef at an upscale restaurant for the more stable hours that the diner offered. The morning rush kept him busy until about 10:30, when the crowd thinned out and he finally had a moment to breathe. He was wiping down his station when Marlene appeared at the kitchen doorway, an odd expression on her face. "There's someone asking for you," she said, a hint of curiosity in her tone. Patrick frowned. "For me? Who?" "Some fancy lady in a suit. Says her name is Tessa Porter." Patrick nearly dropped the spatula he was cleaning. "The woman from last night, what's she doing here?" Marlene raised an eyebrow. "Last night, Patrick Vance, have you been holding out on me?" "It's not like that," Patrick protested, untying his apron. "I just helped her when someone stole her purse, that's all." "Well, she doesn't look like the kind of woman who comes to a place like this without a reason. Better not keep her waiting." Patrick quickly washed his hands and stepped out into the dining area, immediately spotting Tessa Porter seated in a booth by the window. She wore a navy pantsuit today, her chestnut hair pulled back into a sleek ponytail. She looked even more out of place in the daylight, like a falcon that had accidentally landed in a sparrow's nest. "Miss Porter," Patrick said as he approached her table. "This is unexpected." She looked up with a smile that transformed her serious face. "Mr. Vance, I hope you don't mind me tracking you down. How did you find me? You mentioned you were a cook when we spoke last night," she said, though Patrick couldn't recall sharing that detail. "I asked around at a few local establishments. Your colleague Marlene is quite proud of your culinary skills, by the way." Patrick slid into the seat across from her, feeling underdressed in his kitchen whites and worn jeans. "Is everything okay? Did something happen after I left?" "Everything's fine," she assured him. "But I wasn't satisfied with how we left things. You refused a reward, which was very noble, but I don't like leaving debts unpaid." "It really wasn't." "Please," she interrupted, holding up a hand. "Let me finish. After you left, I realized what had almost happened. My entire life was in that purse, not just money and credit cards, but irreplaceable items. Photos of my late father, the key to my childhood home, even the flash drive with the presentation I'm giving to my board of directors this afternoon." She paused, her eyes sincere. "What you did was protect more than just my possessions. You protected my memories and my livelihood." Patrick shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have done the same." "That's where you're wrong," Tessa said, leaning forward slightly. "I watched from my car as at least 3 people saw that boy grab my purse. They did nothing. You were the only one who acted." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out an envelope. "I insist you take this. Consider it compensation for your bravery." Patrick eyed the envelope warily. "Miss Porter, I appreciate the gesture, but I really can't. It's a gift certificate," she said quickly. "For Emma." The mention of his daughter's name caught Patrick by surprise. "How do you know her name?" Tessa's cheeks colored slightly. "You called her by name last night, and she called you Daddy." "I hope it's not inappropriate, but it's for Kingsley Adventure Park. Every child should experience it at least once, and from what Marlene mentioned about your situation." Patrick felt a mix of emotions: embarrassment that Marlene had apparently shared details of his financial struggles, but also a wave of gratitude. Emma had been begging to go to Kingsley Adventure Park ever since her friends had started having birthday parties there, but the admission prices were well beyond his budget. "That's incredibly thoughtful," he admitted, finally accepting the envelope. "There's one more thing," Tessa said, a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice. I'd like to invite you and Emma to dinner tonight. As a proper thank you, Patrick hesitated. I don't get off until 6 and it's a school night for Emma. I understand completely. Perhaps another time then, she said, the disappointment evident in her voice despite her polite smile. Something about her reaction made Patrick reconsider. It had been so long since he'd had an adult conversation with anyone outside of work. And Emma had been asking why they never went out to restaurants like her friends' families did. Actually, he found himself saying, if 6:30 isn't too late, we could meet you somewhere. Tessa's face brightened. 6:30 is perfect. There's a place called Giordano's on 5th Street. It's casual enough for Emma but has excellent food. She paused. At least, I hope you'll think so, given your profession. I'm sure it will be wonderful, Patrick said, surprised by the anticipation he felt. Excellent. I'll see you both then. Tessa stood, smoothing her suit jacket with practiced precision. And Patrick, thank you for accepting. As she walked out of the diner, Patrick became aware of Marlene standing nearby with a knowing smirk on her face. Not a word, he warned her, though he couldn't help smiling. I didn't say anything, she replied innocently. But if I were you, I'd ask for tomorrow night off. You haven't had a proper date since Lisa passed. It's not a date, Patrick insisted, though the idea sent an unexpected flutter through his chest. It's just dinner. The rest of his shift crawled by, his mind repeatedly wandering to the evening ahead. When he picked Emma up from after-school care, he found himself unusually concerned about what they would wear. We're going out to dinner tonight, Em, he told her as they drove home, with a new friend I made. Emma perked up from the back seat. A friend? Is it a girlfriend? Patrick chuckled. It's a woman I helped yesterday when someone tried to steal her purse. The lady from the parking lot, Emma asked, her memory impressive as always. She was pretty. She looked like a princess from my books. Did she now? Patrick mused, glancing at his daughter in the rearview mirror. Well, she's actually a businesswoman, and she gave us tickets to Kingsley Adventure Park as a thank you. Emma's squeal of delight filled the car. Really, Daddy? Kingsley, can we go this weekend? Please, please, please. We'll see, Patrick said, but he was already mentally rearranging his schedule to make it work. Emma's happiness was worth whatever shift swapping he'd have to do. At home, Patrick faced the dilemma of his limited wardrobe. After several minutes of deliberation, he settled on his only decent pair of dark jeans and a blue button-down shirt he normally saved for parent-teacher conferences. Emma insisted on wearing her fancy dress, a purple velvet number that was slightly too small, but had been her favorite since Christmas. They arrived at Giordano's at 6:35, Patrick nervously scanning the restaurant until he spotted Tessa sitting at a corner table. She had changed from her business suit into a simple cream-colored sweater and dark slacks, her hair loose around her shoulders. The casual attire somehow made her even more striking. She stood up as they approached, her smile warm and genuine. Patrick, Emma, I'm so glad you could make it. Miss Porter, thank you for inviting us, Patrick said formally. Please call me Tessa. She crouched down to Emma's level. And you must be Emma. Your dad told me you're 6 years old. Is that right? Emma nodded shyly, half hiding behind Patrick's leg. Are you really a princess? She asked in a whisper that was still perfectly audible. Tessa laughed, the sound musical and uninhibited. No, I'm afraid not, but that's the nicest thing anyone's said to me all day. They settled into their seats, and to Patrick's relief, Tessa immediately engaged Emma in conversation about school and her favorite books, showing a genuine interest that seemed to put his daughter at ease. By the time their appetizers arrived, Emma was chattering away as if she'd known Tessa for years. Daddy used to make special food in a fancy restaurant, Emma announced as they shared a plate of calamari. He made swans out of chocolate for my birthday. Is that so? Tessa raised an eyebrow at Patrick. Patrick cleared his throat. I was a sous chef at Lumiere before, well before our circumstances changed. Recognition flashed in Tessa's eyes. Lumiere, that's one of the best restaurants in the city. Chef Laurent is a culinary genius. You know Laurent. Patrick asked, surprised. I've had the pleasure of dining there several times for business engagements, Tessa explained. The chocolate soufflé is legendary. Daddy made that, Emma said proudly. He can make anything. Patrick felt a mix of pride and embarrassment. That was a long time ago, Em. I'm just a line cook now. Sometimes life takes unexpected turns, Tessa said softly, her eyes meeting his with understanding rather than pity. But talent doesn't disappear because circumstances change. There was something in the way she said it that made Patrick wonder about her own story. Throughout dinner, they exchanged small details about their lives, Patrick explaining his transition to single fatherhood after his wife's accident, and Tessa revealing glimpses of her role as CEO of Porter Technologies, a company she had built from the ground up after leaving a corporate job that had stifled her creativity. "So you understand what it's like to start over," Patrick commented as they shared a tiramisu for dessert. "In some ways," Tessa agreed. "Though I can't claim to have done it while raising a child alone. That takes a special kind of strength." Emma, who had been coloring on the children's menu, looked up at Tessa with chocolate-smeared lips. "Daddy's the strongest person in the whole wide world. He can carry me and all the groceries at the same time." The adults laughed, and Patrick felt a warmth spreading through him that had nothing to do with the glass of wine he'd been nursing. It had been so long since he'd enjoyed a meal he hadn't cooked himself, longer still since he'd found himself genuinely enjoying adult company. As the evening came to an end, Patrick insisted on at least covering the tip, though Tessa had clearly arranged with the restaurant in advance to take care of the bill. Outside in the cool evening air, Emma yawned widely, leaning against Patrick's side. "Someone's ready for bed," he observed, lifting her into his arms. "I had a wonderful time," Tessa said, her expression soft in the glow of the street lamps. "Thank you both for joining me." "We should be thanking you," Patrick replied. "It was nice to get out." They stood there for a moment, an awkward silence falling between them until Emma spoke up sleepily. "Daddy, can Tessa come to Kingsley with us? She could ride the dragon coaster with me if you're too scared." Patrick winced. "Emma, Miss Porter is a very busy woman." "I'm sure she has more important things to do than actually," Tessa interrupted. "I'd love to join you if that's an invitation. I haven't been to Kingsley since I was about Emma's age." Patrick blinked in surprise. "Really? You'd want to spend your weekend with? I mean, wouldn't you rather?" "Patrick," Tessa said gently, "I spend my weekdays making decisions that affect hundreds of employees and millions in revenue. What I'd really like is a day where the biggest decision I have to make is whether to eat cotton candy before or after riding the Ferris wheel." Emma, suddenly more awake, clapped her hands. "We're going to have so much fun. Daddy, say yes." Put on the spot, Patrick found himself nodding. "If you're sure. Saturday, around 10. It's a date," Tessa said, then quickly added, "I mean an arrangement. A plan." They exchanged phone numbers, and as Patrick strapped a now excited Emma into her car seat, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken an unexpected turn. The next 2 days passed in a blur of anticipation. Patrick swapped shifts to get Saturday off, and Emma talked of nothing but the upcoming adventure park trip. When Saturday morning arrived, Patrick found himself spending an unusual amount of time deciding what to wear, something he hadn't done since his dating days with Lisa. They met Tessa at the entrance to Kingsley Adventure Park, where she was waiting in jeans and a light sweater, looking far more relaxed than she had at their previous meetings. Emma ran to her immediately, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the ticket booth. "I've already got our passes," Tessa explained, producing 3 VIP wristbands. "These let us skip most of the lines." Patrick raised his eyebrows. "Those must have cost a fortune." Tessa shrugged. "Consider it an investment in fun. Life's too short to spend it waiting in lines." The day that followed was one Patrick knew he would remember for years to come. They rode roller coasters, Emma laughing hysterically while Patrick white-knuckled the safety bar, played carnival games, where Tessa revealed an unexpected competitive streak, and ate far too much junk food, cotton candy before and after the Ferris wheel, as it turned out. Throughout it all, Patrick found himself watching Tessa as much as he watched Emma. The composed businesswoman had given way to someone playful and uninhibited, who didn't mind getting splashed on the log ride or having her face painted like a butterfly to match Emma's tiger. "You're staring," Tessa said during a brief moment when Emma was occupied with an arcade game. Patrick felt heat rise to his face. Sorry, it's just, you're not what I expected. What did you expect? I don't know, someone more. Reserved, serious? Tessa laughed. I can be very serious. Just ask my board of directors, but that's not all I am. Her expression softened. Just like you're not just a line cook or a single dad, we all contain multitudes, Patrick. Before he could respond, Emma bounded back to them, proudly displaying a small stuffed penguin she'd won. Look what I got with my tickets. That's awesome, Em, Patrick said, grateful for the interruption. As the day wore on and the park began to empty, Patrick found himself reluctant for it to end. Emma was visibly tiring, her earlier boundless energy fading as she leaned against him on a bench while they shared a final pretzel. We should probably head home soon, he said regretfully. Someone's ready for bed. I'm not tired, Emma protested, even as she yawned widely. Tessa smiled, gently brushing a strand of hair from Emma's face. Even brave tiger explorers need their rest. They walked slowly toward the exit, Emma between them, occasionally reaching up to hold both their hands. The gesture wasn't lost on Patrick, who felt a complex mixture of emotions. Emma hadn't connected with anyone this quickly since Lisa died. In the parking lot, Patrick found himself prolonging their goodbye. This was incredible. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, Tessa replied. 3 days ago in that parking lot. She glanced down at Emma, who was now half asleep against Patrick's leg. She's a remarkable child. She likes you, Patrick said quietly. She doesn't warm up to people easily anymore. Tessa's expression turned serious. Patrick, I want to be honest with you. When I came to find you at the diner, it wasn't just about thanking you for getting my purse back. What do you mean? There was something about you, about the way you didn't hesitate to help a stranger, the way you spoke to your daughter, the dignity with which you refused a reward. It made an impression on me. She took a deep breath. I've been surrounded by people who want things from me for so long that meeting someone who expected nothing was refreshing. Patrick wasn't sure how to respond. Tessa, I'm not explaining this well, she said, frustration evident in her voice. What I'm trying to say is that I'd like to see you again, both of you if that's okay, or just you sometime, for dinner or coffee or, I don't know. The normally confident CEO suddenly looked vulnerable and Patrick found it endearing. I'd like that, we both would. Relief washed over her face. Good, that's good. They stood there for a moment longer before Emma tugged on Patrick's hand. Daddy, I'm sleepy. Can Tessa come over tomorrow for Sunday pancakes? Patrick looked at Tessa questioningly. Sunday pancakes are kind of a tradition at our place, nothing fancy, but I'd love to, Tessa said immediately. What time? 9-ish, I'll text you our address. It's a date, Tessa said, and this time she didn't correct herself. The next few weeks saw Tessa becoming a regular presence in their lives. Sunday pancakes turned into movie nights, weekday dinners when her schedule allowed, and even helping Emma with a science project that involved more glitter than any CEO had likely ever handled. For Patrick, it was like watching a flower bloom in time lapse. The connection between them grew so naturally that he almost didn't notice it happening until one evening, after Emma had gone to bed, when they found themselves lingering on the couch, talking about everything and nothing. I never imagined my life turning out this way, Tessa admitted, curled up with her legs tucked beneath her. When I was building Porter Technologies, relationships were always secondary. There was always another milestone, another goal to achieve. And now? Patrick asked, aware of how close they were sitting. Now I'm starting to think I had my priorities backward, she said softly. Success means nothing if you have no one to share it with. Patrick reached out hesitantly, taking her hand. I know what you mean. After Lisa died, I thought my life would just be about survival, getting through each day for Emma's sake. I never expected to feel this again. This, Tessa asked, her eyes meeting his. Hope, Patrick said simply. Possibility. The kiss that followed was gentle, tentative, a question rather than a statement. When they broke apart, Tessa's eyes shimmered with emotion. I should probably go, she whispered, though she made no move to leave. Probably, Patrick agreed, equally motionless. It was nearly midnight when she finally did leave, both of them knowing that something fundamental had shifted between them. The following months brought changes that Patrick could never have anticipated. With Tessa's encouragement, he began catering small events on his days off, rediscovering his passion for creating beautiful food. Emma blossomed under the additional attention, her nightmares becoming less frequent, her smile more ready. And Tessa, to her own surprise, found that splitting her attention between work and personal life actually made her a more effective leader. "I'm making decisions from a place of fullness now," she explained to Patrick. "Not from the emptiness I was trying to fill with work." It wasn't all smooth sailing. There were adjustments and compromises on both sides. Patrick had to overcome his pride to accept that Tessa wanted to share her resources with them. Tessa had to learn that her executive decision-making style didn't always translate to family life. And Emma had moments of confusion and worry that this new happiness might somehow vanish like her mother had. But through it all, the connection that had sparked in that parking lot continued to grow stronger. 6 months after their first meeting, as they walked along the riverfront with Emma running ahead to feed the ducks, Patrick finally gave voice to what had been in his heart for weeks. "I love you," he said simply. "I didn't expect it, and I wasn't looking for it, but there it is." Tessa stopped walking, her face illuminated by the setting sun. "I love you too, both of you, more than I thought possible." Emma came running back then, breadcrumbs on her coat and excitement in her eyes. "Daddy, Tessa, the ducks followed me." Patrick lifted her up, settling her on his hip even though she was getting almost too big for it. "That's because they know a good person when they see one," he said, his eyes never leaving Tessa's. 1 year to the day after the purse-snatching incident, Patrick and Emma moved out of their apartment and into Tessa's home, a beautiful house with a garden where Emma could play and a kitchen where Patrick could create. They celebrated with a dinner party for their closest friends, including Marlene from the diner, who took full credit for their relationship. "If I hadn't told her where to find you, none of this would have happened," she declared, raising her glass in a toast. Later that night, after the guests had gone and Emma was asleep in her new room, Patrick found Tessa in the kitchen, washing the last of the dishes despite his protests that they could wait until morning. "Let me help," he said, taking a plate from her hands and drying it carefully. "We make a good team," she observed, passing him another dish. "The best," Patrick agreed. "You know, a year ago today, I was just trying to get through each day, making enough to pay the rent, keep Emma fed, maybe save a little for her college fund someday. I never imagined that a purse snatcher would change our lives," Tessa finished for him, a smile playing at her lips. "I've thought about sending that kid a thank you card," Patrick laughed. "Maybe not, but I do think about how many little decisions led us here. If I'd been a minute later getting home that day. If you'd parked somewhere else, if Emma hadn't heard you scream." "I believe it would have happened anyway," Tessa said confidently. "Some people are meant to find each other." Patrick set down the towel and pulled her into his arms. "Is that the analytical CEO talking, believing in fate?" "That's the woman who loves you talking," she replied, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. "The CEO is taking the night off." As they stood in their kitchen, holding each other close, Patrick thought about how sometimes the most unexpected detours in life's journey led to the most beautiful destinations. A stolen purse, a chance encounter, a simple act of kindness, these were the moments that changed everything. And for a struggling single father and a successful CEO who had once thought she had everything figured out, it was proof that the heart's greatest adventures often began when you least expected them.